Good morning and welcome to, I think this is the 16th Flow Chaser Mondays. It's a presentation I'm giving every Monday at 6 a.m. in 2026. Hopefully, it's going to get you connected to meaningful work, to the work that puts you into the flow state. And that's why we call this Flow Chasers Monday. Let's get started. Okay. So there is a plan with this whole thing. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Flow Chaser Monday is all about, who I am. Then we're going to dive into a little brief interlude about burnout because I believe that it's so connected to the flow state. One as a relief from burnout, but two as also like a purpose and direction thing, and how those are interconnected. So let's start. A little bit about this presentation. There's no selling. It's something that I'm doing to work on my presentation skills and use the power of repetition. I also have a lot of energy in the morning, and not so much at night. But Mondays also represent like a new start. So as you're thinking about doing work, which is something that we often are thinking about on Monday mornings, I want you to think about doing work in the way that really lights you up and a state that you really enjoy. And that's what I identify as the flow state. So we're going to be around 30 minutes. I'm getting so much better at staying on time. It was rough at first. There used to be notes on the website. I redid my website. So you're going to have to wait a little bit for that page to come back. But eventually there will be notes back on the website. And this presentation is changing too. So you'll see some slides are not like the other. This is a presentation that I work on gradually. So I just update a few slides as I can. So I am a web design brand designer. I have a business highly anticipated. I said I just redid my website. I'm moving into where AI meets marketing and also with brand and web design, which I'm really excited about. So that's like my work life, my personal life. I love to knit. I'm somebody who's highly ambitious. I have a squiggly, hard to drive brain. So sometimes I'm like really passionate and motivated, and other times I'm really burnt out. I also really like it, like interdisciplinary things. So there's something where it's like you can glean from other modalities or topics, and it gives you more of an idea of one topic. Um, so a little bit about how my brain works. I'm also somebody who's been through burnout, and I discovered there's really a link between burnout and chasing flow. And let me describe that. So burnout starts with you have like a high capacity person. This is theory. This is like the world according to Lacey, pop psychology according to Lacey. I have no degree in this. It's just like a personal hobby or a special interest of mine. So burnout starts because you have a high capacity person, and that person is recognized for doing something that is either productive or profitable or makes other people feel good. And so that person is like noticed for being smart or all of those things that their capacity provides. And praise is applied. And so the person feels that like praise is dependent on them doing the role that makes them that is like the most optimized for them. And so there's this kind of rush to be like even more efficient to get more praise, more access to resources, all the other things. And we lose connection to what it is that really, really drives us. And I believe that that is what ultimately leads to burnout. And burnout is really, really painful because we are detached from the things that give us meaning and purpose. And mostly it's because of that prioritization of the things that we get praise or compensation, access to resources, love, even for. We're willing to do those things at the risk of what do I actually want? Who am I actually? What are my how am I interacting with this environment in a way that inspires and motivates me? I mean, that's really like the juice of life. And when you're burnt out, there's almost no space because all the space, if you think about the jar with the big rocks, your big rocks are not your purpose and your life and your drive and your soul. The big rocks are the things that you get praise for, that you get resources for, and then everything else just kind of filters around it. And that is a really good way to burn out. So we go unconscious and we numb because ultimately this is a very painful thing that happens to not be in touch with our own excitement, our own passion and vigor. What this is leading to is that passion and vigor. In some kind of woo-woo modalities, that is called like the erotic, the drive to create from passion. And this is directly due to business. I see this all the time. Um, I see it in me. Like, I want to start a new business because of the death of the erotic in my like this stops being pleasurable at a point because I focus and reprioritize the wrong things. And so when there's like a shakeup, a new prioritization has to happen. And I believe that during that, when we are connected to our values and our priorities, we have greater access to flow. What is flow? And I'll talk about your brain on flow, which is like my favorite slide of this whole thing. How to chase flow. And there's a new slide in there because I just found out that Bashar has a formula that I feel he calls it the formula. But it's just such a fantastic way of like getting into the flow. We'll talk about creativity and adaptability, radical self acceptance, and alignment as a flow trigger. So let's just like get into this because it gets so juicy. I need to fix this slide. Okay, so what I conceptualize flow to be is we all have this comfort zone, and the inside of our comfort zone, that's the things that we do automatically. Those are the things that are unconscious, even because they're so comfortable. Our guard is down. It's when we feel like the most safe and secure and like comforted by the world, like the nucleus, if you will, of our comfort zone is there. And then as we start working out of it, we just have a little bit more uncertainty. And so at the very edge of a person's comfort zone, it might feel like, I don't know what is going to happen, but I know I'm going to be okay. And when we get into these flow states, what scientists and researchers and just people who are observing these incredible feats of human performance and human artistic ability and synergy, um, is that people are noticing that there's a curiosity that's happening just outside of the comfort zone of, I don't know what will happen, but I'm excited. There's not necessarily safety on the outside of our comfort zone. There's potentially very real threat. And the threat could even be like the trigger into the flow state. So I believe the flow state happens just outside of your comfort zone, almost into this liminal place where you're playing with possibilities. Elizabeth Gilbert has such a wonderful book, Big Magic, about creativity and the spirit of it. And if you think about like the outer possibilities of your psyche, when you get into those most like hopeful and energized states, it's you don't know the outcome per se, but you're engaged and you're locked in and you're curious. And that happens all the way until dysregulation. And dysregulation is such a spectrum and it's such a breadth between how we are on a single day and individuals, how we are wired, how far we can have that space. And in this space, what people have noticed is that there's this melting away of time. There is this engagement, almost like a psychic intuition, especially if you're like in group flow, where you're anticipating somebody's need. If you ever seen like improv comedy, sports, that is what we would genuinely think as of as like a flow state, an observable flow state where you're seeing people. It's like, how did he know that that basketball player was about to, move around this player and he just was immediately there? It's like these are people that have trained to engage with flow, group flow, this physical flow of the sport. And that happens all the way up to dysregulation. Dysregulation could look like I need to go pee, all the way until like I am really upset by some of the things that are coming at me. And when you are dysregulated, the flow stops because all of your energy has to pull back to find regulation. And that's okay. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. And I'll talk a little bit more about some theories about extending out that dysregulation zone so that you can have more access to complete focus and absorption and the flow state. Why do we want the flow state? Why is it so yummy? Why is it so good? It's free drugs. And these are drugs that are like really hard for scientists to actually like quantify, but they can kind of like see the delta of like brain waves and guess that it's like dopamine or norepinephrine. But what's going on during these flow states is your brain is triggering, or maybe it's your gut, probably both, is triggering this neurotransmitter surge. And it has all these connections where it's like there is a street equivalent, and the street equivalent of what your brain would just produce naturally would like kill a person, kill an elephant. But our brains are just happily producing this because that is the correct response to whatever situation maybe that we have engineered or maybe that we've just dropped into. So we're getting this surge. It feels really good. And part of that surge is quieting the prefrontal cortex, which, if you are ADHD like me, can be quite a bully. It's the voice inside your head that's like, this sucks. How long is this going to be? It doesn't know time. At least my ADHD brain doesn't. But really, the inner critic dials down. I think I have an eyelash in my eye. One moment. Okay. And that feels really, really good, especially if your inner critic is very loud every other moment of the day. So, how do we chase this yummy, feel good state of hyper productivity, of brilliance? It's so individual. And because it's so individual, anybody who provides this like surefire way to access the flow state every single time, it's baloney because we're human and when we interact with our environment and our souls and other people, we have this veritable ability to access this flow state based off of where we are, how hydrated we are, how well we slept, our regulation at the moment, which is such a changing thing. When I heard Bashar talk about the formula, and Bashar is this channeled being from millions of light years away, this alien that is communicating with this middle-aged man, Daryl Unk. And it's fascinating and so positive. But he has this formula. Number one, act on passion first. This is like his philosophy for how humans can engage with life in a way that elevates their vibrational pull towards positivity and to love and to have access to greater connectivity. So his thing is act on passion first. It's like if you have a positive inclination or just an inclination to do something, like I want to go knit, I want to do this, I want to call this person, act on passion first. And then two, act as far until the passion wanes, until you start going, I want to do something else. That's okay. And then three, act on passion without assumption of outcome. Do it for the love of doing it because it excites you, do it because you don't know what's going to happen, but it's very engaging and something that you would love to see out. Four, no matter what manifests, stay in a positive state. So no matter what happens, what wrench gets thrown in the plan, what rain falls down on the parade. Don't automatically assume this is good or this is bad. This is the hardest one for me because my Virgo brain, she wants to be like, "Oh, this is good and this is bad, and I need to stay away from that bad thing." And like judgment is really been my armor in life. So when something happens, trying not to see it as wonderful and everything, or not to see it as horrible and the worst and a sign of the apocalypse, I do go there. But to just see it as neutral, as like it's all information and it's all going well. And to stay in a positive state. So these things that come in and disguise themselves as struggles or perceived loss, even, to stay in that positive state of like, I can never lose anything. So, five, examine your beliefs and release fear. And I just said, I can never lose anything. That is one of my affirmations. This idea that we can lose love or lose opportunities or that things, no, that is not an experience that I've had. Every door that is closed, another one is opened. Nature abhors a vacuum. So when you stay in this positive state, things will exit and things will enter. And we, going back to number four, we don't need to necessarily attach like, this is so good or this is so awful. We can just like be in the beliefs and examine them and be like, that's the fear response. I can release that because ultimately I'm fearing loss, and loss is just a myth. Fight me on that. It's very metaphysical, but loss is a complete myth. One of the things I used to get hung up on was this loss of time. I am somebody who has a brain that likes to go unconscious and scroll for hours. Maybe you can relate. I have a brain that likes to play dumb video games and be avoidant of my responsibilities sometimes. I get into shitty flow, and that's where you're using that unconscious state, but not for the benefit of like engaging your mind, your soul, and your body, just for numbing out. I know the difference. Do you know the difference? And I used to attach like I was bad for for having these less than productive flow states where it's like I didn't know where time went. I didn't know anything that was happening. Now I'm realizing this is just part of like the bounds of working with a brain that's a little bit more tricky. I am going to have shitty flow sessions where the most I can hope for is just like my good sessions. I set a timer, kind of minimize my risk of becoming more dysregulated than I realize. And then that dysregulation zone is very, very instant. I've been there a few times, and that looks like a single stressor comes in and it's the end of the world, and I just need to like go for a walk. But really, I probably should have taken a break 30 minutes ago, grabbed some water, maybe another cup of coffee, and chilled. So, when you learn how to be an architect between shitty flow and like a positive, yummy flow, then you have your own discernment of how much. But if you are judging yourself for getting into the shitty flow, I guarantee that that is probably going to push you to engage in more unconscious behavior because it comes down to burnout. And the way to positively engaged is like Bashar, the formula would say, it's like act on your passion. Passion is bifurcating force against that shitty flow. And then because I'm a business owner who works with other small business owners, I'm always thinking about like, okay, how do you have a high flow business? And as I have more people that I'm adding to my team, I'm thinking, okay, well, number one, we are mission driven. We have to have everybody rowing in the same direction if you want to get into flow. Because if one person is like rowing upstream, we're cutting the flow that we can gain. So mission driven, also freedom. I'm constantly trying to figure out how I can have autonomy. And when I go down because I have a brain that sometimes goes into like depressive states, I need to take some time off. And so I'm having a team that provides me the freedom to work with who I am instead of against it. And then that focused and consistent, this was also such a hard concept for me as someone who's felt judged for squirreling over the years. So I typically will set like goals that a consecutive amount of discipline and showing up. Like I did a marathon back in 2026, which was or back in 2025. That was so good for me in the sense of I had to consistently show up for that goal and extend my belief around how I could be consistent. And that was such a motivator and such a flow inducer was that consistency. That's also something that I'm finding in these presentations that I give every Monday. The pattern, it's not too often, but it's often enough where I'm still keeping engaged and keeping it fresh week to week. It's also, going over to the fourth one, adaptive. I'm adapting for the different things that are coming into the market adaption really is how you pivot when there's an external outside force, how you adapt to change, how you adapt to challenge, which is an extreme flow inducing state because there's a challenge. You have enough of that like outside of your comfort zone where you have engaged your brain into that like liminal space, but the stakes are high enough where you have the resources to stave off dysregulation maybe longer because you are so engaged in that. Maybe because at some level you feel like a threat. Clear goals and directions. You have to know your energetic like boundaries of how much you are willing to like chase a goal. And as a business owner, you have to set them. So that's what like the when you have to set how you're willing to get there, so that's your values, but that's as important as, like, your clear goals, like, "Here's where we're going, and here's what we're willing to do to get there." I feel is, like, the goals, like, in my business, we are clear, kind, and bold, and so that's, like, our values of how we get to anything, but certainly to how we get to our goals, which is consistent 3-month income goal, and then to increase capacity with freelancers. So there's like a clear goal, but we are going to do that by being clear, kind, and bold. So that's how I internalize it. And when I can get myself on that, which is like the clear direction, and I can get my team on that, like we are gold. And we're really like flowing and jamming and rowing in the same direction at that point. And that's how, with all this together, we are growing capacity. When you no longer see the struggles and the adaptations that you are being asked to make as good or bad, you can look at them as inducers of the flow state. Challenge, cool. What do I need to do? Do I need to clear the decks? Do I need to like call a person to engage in that banter? Because that's sometimes how a person is like guaranteed to access the flow state is through that one-on-one. People will say that like, oh, I'm an audible processor. It's like, no, you're not. You're somebody who gets into the flow state through conversing. Um, it is the same thing, but like these are we crave high flow career because we do not want to ultimately be compensated or be praised for the things that burn us out. That is a type of hiding. Maybe you haven't thought about it that way, but try. When you are rewarded for being something that is not self, you are not seen, and that can feel safe to some people. The challenge is to really live this high flow life and high flow career. It's the challenge is to be seen for you and to run your life through your values and to achieve, like, pursue these goals through the lens of your values and your capacities and your talents and also your challenges that are presented to you. And then we have this opportunity to stave off dysregulation by working on what is regulating to us, what is in our comfort zone. Right now, it might really be the thing that you get the praise for, but it also might be for something else, for an art practice, for, that might be your highest capacity. Whatever it is, I want you to play around with this week for finding the opportunities to get into the flow state without judgment. So if it is a hobby, do that hobby. As Bashar says, number one, act on passion. And that is the number one way of increasing your access to the flow state, but also like living life in this really wonderful, life fulfilling way. Steps to good flow. It all starts with regulation because dysregulation is the end of the fun, right? We have to get out of our comfort zone and up to the point until regulation. So anything that we do to regulate our minds and our bodies, so stress management, things like exercise, Mediterranean diet is hugely beneficial for people who like are under a lot of stress because of the antioxidants and the fibers and stuff. It like helps build the gut with chemistry. So maybe look into that. Like things that help you regulate, things that help you de-stress, things that calm the nervous system. Maybe it's sensory deprivation. Maybe you're a cold plunge person. The things that help you regulate are going to be the things that help you get into the flow state and to stay in that state for longer, more comfortably. When you also center your purpose and your values, and these are unique to you, and that is why something else might have burnt you out, but something that's deeply aligned with you could be your ticket to a very high flow life. So finding that alignment with that high flow life is so worth your time and your effort. And I know that other people's requests of you are very, very loud, but your own requests of your soul and your passions, I think, need to be equally loud. So define a goal that really lights you up. That is like the thing that just you don't know why, but you're just so passionate about. And if you can just even conceive of a goal where that is something that takes up a larger space of your life, you will have extended that ability to access the flow state by just following your passion and like invigorating one area of passion invigorates everything else. Like people are always surprised. Like I took up hiking and my business became more profitable. Like our hobbies really do benefit our lives. So any time that you send in a good positive flow state is going to trickle out into other parts of your life. And you better believe that engagement with that purpose is going to really benefit you. Some people need to remove distractions, other people need artifacts. Like if I'm hopping from here to here, I'm kind of on artifacts for a lot of different flow. I also really resonate when people say that like speaking helps them flow. I am trying to practice talking out loud to myself more. And someone says, like, oh no, talking out loud to yourself is awful. You have to like talk to something like an inanimate object. And I have these little like amigurumi. Like I have a pickle and an emotional support dumpster fire, but it's like little crochet. So I might talk to it. Like whatever gets you into the flow state, even if it's weird, you can do. Please don't lock me up. And also stop when you need to. This is actually a body trust thing. If your body feels threatened when it dives into something with deep attention and focus, you actually lose your access to focus because your body's own alert system will sound off and you'll lose focus and you'll get distraction. So, part of this healing and recovering process has been to set an alarm way before I know that I can, um, that I'd want to stop, and then giving myself like a transition time. So, say I'm working on something that I'm really excited about, I'll set my alarm for 50 minutes because if I'm really excited about it, I know that I can sit there for hours, not drinking anything, not doing anything, but sitting there, maybe in the same like hunch state. Hours. That's what people don't understand about ADHD who don't have it. It's like, yeah, we have very short attention spans sometimes, but other times we can lock in for inconceivably long amounts of time. And it hurts the body, and the body learns that when it sits down to work, that that is not safe, and you will have an attention issue very, very soon if you do not stop when you need to stop. So set a timer or do something where you're really honoring your body cues to drop out of a flow state and take care of yourself. Grab that water, grab that cup of coffee, take a 30-minute nap. A 30-minute nap midday is just so glorious. This comes down to I believe the flow state is more acceptable when you believe that whoever you are, your own stew of talents, experience, challenges, is worthy of acceptance and support. That's baseline trust. That's releasing the fear that, like, oh, I'm broken and I shouldn't be doing this. And what really excites me and lights me up is weird, and other people aren't going to understand it. And it's like you have this one life. If you desire to chase flow authentically, dropping those fears one by one and really chasing this like alignment and self acceptance as a flow trigger is incredible. Highly recommend it. So I believe that that's part of expanding the comfort zone because when you accept yourself and you accept the challenges and possible triggers and you're not getting dysregulated, you do have access to more of this flow state, which is nice. Thank you so much. If you're watching this, I don't know what stage, I'm just leaving these all up. This has been such a fun experiment for me, and I hope you have a wonderful week chasing flow and doing things with meaning and purpose. Take care.